evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Trey Cruz Show, uh, streaming live from the St. Paul, Minnesota. Got a very special guest this evening. We got Monica James from Muncie, Indiana. How you doing, Monica?
Hey Trey, I'm doing great over here.
And happy holidays to you. I'm glad you took some
Thank
time
you.
out to jump from your holiday to jump on this call and have this important discussion about reparations in Native Black Americans today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for inviting me.
No problem, no problem. So, um, how's the dinner going today? How's everything going?
The dinner went well, actually. It went really well.
No,
With the small guest list, you don't have a lot in your house anymore.
exactly. Yeah, we'd real small. Been celebrating my mom and my son's birthday all week, so it's really just a continuation of that.
Right.
Um, Dealing with Thanksgiving, a lot of people start talking about Native Americans. But when we
Yeah.
think Native Americans or Indians, we never think about Africans or Black people. So when I was growing up, one thing I was surprised to find out was that my grandma was a Blackfoot Indian. That's her right there.
Nice.
I mean,
Nice.
so yeah, I found that out, man, and that's just part of my lineage. She was coming out of Louisiana on my dad's side. He's American descendant of slavery coming out of Mississippi. So I just was reading up on some things, and I know people have been talking about it a lot lately, as far as Native Black Americans,
Right.
Blacks who were Indians, but also who were enslaved.
Right. And I want to add a twist to that real quick, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Um, a lot of us are part Native, and some of us are not part Native. But the ones that are part Native have been members of their family have been disinherited, right?
Right.
But do you know they do not disinherit the white people
Mm.
that inbreded them?
Wow.
Yeah,
You
that's
speak
something to think
to
about.
that.
I thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay, so that brings me to this article right here. And it says and this is talking about the Creek lands. It
Right,
said people often think about the Trail of Tears, Grayson said, but they never think about the folks of African descent. They suffered loss just like full-blooded Indians. But before that, it talks about the relocated free Blacks living as members of the tribe or those with mixed African indigenous heritage. Others were enslaved. So before that, it was so they talk about the Trail of Tears and how Native Americans would march from Georgia and Alabama all the way to Oklahoma. But a lot of people don't realize that there were uh, descendants of slaves on that march.
yeah.
And
Not only descendants of slaves, Treyhan, there were actual Black indigenous people.
correct.
There
Correct.
were actually Black, and my grandmother's mother, my great grandmother, was an indigenous Black woman.
Mm,
And so I think that needs to be remembered, even though we have two parts. We have one that came out of slavery, which was from my grandmother's father, and my grandmother's mother was just a Black woman that was indigenous. And she was just disinherited because she married a Black man that was in slavery.
so what can you tell us a little bit
And
more
I
about,
should say her mother is her grandmother. Let me be corrected. It's her grandmother.
can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think back then there was a lot of indigenous people that were enslaved, and I mean disenfranchised from their heritage because they had mingled with black people that was considered slaves, and they didn't
Mm,
consider themselves black. They did consider themselves Native Americans of their tribes, so they were not considered black. And those tribes were all at war, as far as I remember, as far as what I've learned about them. They were all at war with one another, but they had became one and united on a united front when when the intruders came. Let's put it that way. When the intruders came, they became united on a united front, and then they were all being intact. And so when the Trails of Tears came, they marched black Native Americans as well as brown skinned Native Americans to the west
right.
because they wanted that land. They were pushing them further and further out because they wanted that land. But when
That's
they
right.
discovered on the west coast there were gold and coal and different things, they wanted to go west.
Mm,
And so what the indigenous tribes did was they did sort of like Africa. Who do they get rid of?
the
The
blacks.
black.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I know about it. That's the little bit I know about it. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know I have family members that know something about it. And because I have indigenous on both sides, and I'm not very familiar with it on both sides of the family, but that is one story that I did learn a little bit about.
Shout out to Marissa Anderson. She said the history of the Choctaw County, Mississippi.
Yes. And we're from Alabama. So the South
So,
know about natives.
and then, so talking about what you were just saying, it said among those relocated were free blacks living as members of the tribe or those with mixed African and indigenous heritage. Others
Right.
were enslaved. People often think about the Trail of Tears, Grayson said, but they never think about the folks of African descent. They suffered loss just like full-blooded Indians suffered loss. About 24,000 Cree people were removed on the Trail of Tears by 1860. The Creek Nation held 1,600 people in bondage. Historians estimate that by 1861, 8,000 to 10,000 Black people were enslaved by various tribes in Indian territory.
And many times they tried to discredit our heritage.
Okay. Can
Not
you,
just
what
the
do you,
native, even our government have tried to discredit our heritage. They don't want to mix blacks with Native Americans at all.
and because they didn't want those Blacks getting any wealth or being denied wealth. How you doing,
Right.
Mr. Moore?
How's it going, Trey?
Man, glad you was able to join us for this conversation real quick, man. Happy holidays, sir.
Same to you, sir.
Marissa Anderson just said something in the chat about the history of the Choctaw and County, Mississippi. So we were just going through the Trail of Tears and how there were enslaved Africans there. Um, a piece just came out on NBC about Native Black Americans who were kicked out the tribe, and for the last 10 years, they've been trying to get back into the tribe so they can get, you know, so they can belong to the tribe that they're from. And then the
Yeah,
article goes on to say slavery ended in Greater U.S. in 1865, but not in Creek Nation until 1866, same year the Civil Rights Act was going into being.
Right.
The year the U.S. government signed a treaty freeing the tribe's enslaved peoples, now freedmen, and giving them the right to tribal citizen. Despite the treaty, the question of freedmen citizenship would be debated for a half a century. In 1898, the U.S. government divided Creek lands and gave allotments to each tribal member. Aiding that process were Dawes rolls created by the federal government to categorize Creek people by their blood quantum or as freed men. People who had been enslaved or were descended from the formerly enslaved, but the Dow system was flawed and it created a false binary between freedmen and blood citizens. Members were placed on the rolls based on how they looked, whom they associated with, and where they lived. So that just goes back to what Monica was just saying. If you want to chime in.
Yeah. It would seem like the Department of Interior would bypass what the people who are rejecting the descendants of the slaves. It seemed like they would have something to do with it, but I think the Department of Interior itself is stealing money from the natives also. But yeah, the original, a lot of the original natives were dark like me and you, Trey. You know what I'm saying? And which leads to what a lot of people of color saying they should get reparations, but they're not American descendants of slaves. And you know, it goes back. Not only did we work with our labor that we deserve reparations, we were here with the Indians. We were here as Indians, as natives, and even the Moors were the ones that gave Columbus the maps to get over here. Because you got to remember, the first Europeans here were not English; they were Spanish.
Yep.
And they were here like in the 1500s. Like Florida, that's the Spanish name. There was a lot of Columbus and those guys, even though he never touched the mainland, those guys were here before the English. And the maps that they got were from the Moors, who showed them the map that the world was round. They were some of the greatest navigators in the world, and that's how Columbus got over here. So, you know, and when he got here,
And just
go ahead.
No, but just to piggyback off what you're saying, and then you can jump right back to that. I think the first Thanksgiving was in Florida in the 1500s. And it was by the Spanish. And then one of the early slavery votes happened in, I think, 1525 in South Carolina, where the slaves revolted against a Spaniard slave trader who had a little colony in South Carolina. So like you're saying, Spain was here. So that's 15. We always talk about 1619, but that's 1525 that Ados was rebelling before it was even really considered America, but that there was an early slave rebellion in the early 1500s on the east coast of against the Spaniards on the east coast of America.
Yeah, and you know, it's a book called America. I forget the guy's name. That it's in color, and it shows. It's mainly in South America, but it shows what the natives looked like when Columbus got here. And that, like I say, they were dark as me and you. I mean, it's in color. It's you have to go to like Washington D.C. to see the actual book, because I don't know what happened to it, but so quite as kept, the Spanish owe us reparations, the Americans owe us reparations, but in this North America, definitely, like Pocahontas, her daddy, when they described her father, they described him as being big and black, you know. So, and the Iroquois Federation is what America modeled their government, their republic, after the native Iroquois nation over there on the East Coast. So, you know.
Yes, exactly. Because they had the chief and all that. So, Monica, did you want to chime in on that real quick and go back?
And that takes me back to the beginning of what I said, that indigenous people actually looked like us. We had relatives that were the indigenous people, and we were the large part of the Trails of Tears. But not only were we the Trails of Tears, when you go back to the 1500 and you start talking about people of color that was indigenous as well, you have to remember when they first came over as friends in the Spaniards colonies, They spreaded so many diseases, they start just killing them. They start killing them because they had never been exposed to that type of people before, and they came with so many diseases. And when those people came, they came then and they came afterwards in the 1600s. You weren't seeing the best of these people that came. These countries released their criminals. These people had been inside prisons for years, and they wanted them out of the European and the Spaniards' countries, and they sent them here. That's how they got here. They didn't come here to make a better world or to be free of something. They were sent here, and they were the
By Queen
worst.
Elizabeth.
By more than Queen Elizabeth. It came from many countries. And if you go and look at the actual, if you can research other country books, you'll learn a whole lot more than what the United States tell us, because the United States have lied and hid so much truth from us that education is not education, it's liecation. That's what it really is. They just lie to us. They say, you want to find something, look in a book. I'm going to tell you something I know. You can watch more of the old Westerns and black and white movies and find out more about them than you can in their books. It's full of lies.
It's good to go back and watch some of them old Westerns.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot. What's his name? John Wayne. I was speaking something out with him a little while back. So this is an article from NBC News, the Black Native American descendants fighting for the right to belong. It said no matter their actual ancestry, light-skinned people could end up on the blood roll, while darker-skinned people were listed on the freedmen roll. There are plenty of examples in all tribes in which people in the same family are put on two different rolls, Robert said. For a long time, the rolls were a matter of historical documentation. The people designated as Creek freedmen were full citizens of the Creek Nation until 1979, when everything changed. That year, the tribe voted for a new constitution, changing requirements for tribal citizenship. It required blood ancestry to belong to the tribe, using the final by blood Dawes roll as proof. From that point on, anyone who previously had membership as a result of freedmen ancestry was unrolled. This was a significant hit to previous Black members. In the 1960s and 70s, the Creek Nation began to receive millions of dollars in federal payments for historical violations of treaties dating back to the 1800s, and it was beginning to restructure its government. Around this time, Robert said, many tribes like the Creek were seeking new ways to reinforce their sovereignty from the U.S. government and their nations. Social identities, changing the terms of citizenship, was one way to tell a new story about themselves. From that point on, to be a member of the Creek Nation meant to be by blood citizen. So that's them. That's when they started kicking the blacks out. Sharon Lindsay Scott's mother, Adeline Perryman Lindsay, was one of the members who was disenrolled around the time federal payments were approved. They just said you were no longer a citizen of the nation. Lindsay Scott said one day she was a Creek citizen and the next she wasn't, and she was ineligible for future federal payments. So Monica, you was just saying something similar to that.
Yeah.
When we had first.
The indigenous tribes have long fought against claiming those that were disenfranchised from the tribes so that they didn't have to share any of the wealth with them. But not only them, our government did it. Our government wanted us declassified as Native Americans because they did not want to pay us reparations. They did not want to pay us for the crimes they had done towards us against humanity when they came to this country, nor do they want to pay us for the crimes they done towards us when they brought our other ancestors over as slaves. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing that we have going against us is both the tribes and the United States government have worked hard to deny us the people that we really are.
Ray, did you want to chime in one last time before we move on to the next subject?
No, I think we pretty much got it nailed down.
No doubt.
As far as that.
So there's a lot of work to do on this reparations movement, but for people who are just now learning about it, they need to know that there is a lot of traction picking up, and that this is something that's picking up and has been going on, especially in the last, I say, 2 years. Like
Yeah.
it's really been picking up, and so just any Green Party people or anybody in the Green Party connect with the Black Caucus. And the Black Caucus, the Green Party of the United States Black Caucus, has really been setting the pace with messaging and things as far as it comes to reparations. We've had a big rally on Juneteenth. A lot of people were in solidarity with us across the nation, and we're going to keep pushing the envelope. But in California, the state of California, the governor had just signed a bill because he said because of what was happening with George Floyd, a lot of the civil unrest. When a lot of that was happening, you were starting to see certain cities. Evanston, Illinois,
Was one of the
signed a
first to sign
reparations
off.
bill. I think was the first. I think was the one of the first, yeah, to sign one, and that was last year. And
Yeah.
then I think this year, it's like George Floyd, and a lot of that really kicked it into gear. But also, the group ADOS, Foundational Black Americans, got to give it up to even going back to NARC and
Yeah.
COBRA. So just a lot of groundswell led up to where things are going now, and this is big. It said Newsom signed Assembly Bill 3121 into law on Wednesday, just a couple weeks ago. The bill opens the door to the state paying reparations to Black Californians, especially those who are descendants of slaves. It specifically calls out insurance companies. Existing laws request the University of California to assemble a colloquium of scholars to draft a research proposal to analyze the economic benefits of slavery that accrue to owners and businesses, including insurance companies and their subsidiaries that receive those benefits, and to make recommendations to the legislature regarding their findings. Monica, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I didn't know you still read. I wanted to address two things. One about California, and one about an article that came out that Native Americans are demanding that the racism within the tribes and within Blacks stop in this country. And that was a new article that came out recently as well. But I want to go back to California. I don't want to give all the credit to the governor. That was on a ballot, and the people of California voted, and they wanted to make amends. And California Black population is only somewhere between 2 to 3%. So we know that Black people did not put that make that go across so that it would win. That the state of California people really voted for a change. And I think they changed was speaking about what had been happening in this country and what was causing civil unrest. And yes, the governor did kick it off, but because of the governor kickoff, it led to the people speaking out and voting. And that's what we need to see more across this country. We need to see other people stepping up and signing on and saying reparations is long overdue and that we should do the right thing.
No doubt. But there were Black descendants of slave organizers on the ground putting in work. Ice Cube had even got involved. I know Tone did some work out there. I know the new U.S. Treasurer, Biden signed up the lady. I don't know if she wrote The Color of Money, but he picked her to be a part of his Treasury Department. I think she might have had some work to do with a little bit to do with that also, but it's like you're saying, the people of California, without them wanting to do that, because you're right, because they did strike down I think it was Proposition 2022.
Yep.
Basically, like not letting people unionize, keeping Uber employees, people who work for Uber, it keeps them to be just contract workers instead of them being employees. So I was kind of like, wow, they voted that down, but they supported reparations. So that was kind of I was like, wow, that's fascinating. But yeah, so that's what happened in California, and that's big because that's a statewide, that's the whole state. You know, then it's kind of conservative too. There's California has had Republican governors not too long ago. So there's California, then Evansville. I know Asheville, Carolina. Then Minneapolis just did one called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I think it's going to be important to stay on top of that. I was just looking at something here, and it was talking about how, well, I ain't gonna jump to that right just real quick, but no, it was just because it was talking about insurance companies. So it was talking about how some slave owners, and we'll be talking about this in the next upcoming weeks, how some slave owners would take money that they made in the North and come up and start businesses in Minnesota, and some of those would be insurance companies.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they used to insure the slaves? If I'm not mistaken, they used to insure them.
Yes, they did. Did any of you guys want to chime in on that?
No, I think we're going to wait till you get to a bigger topic on that one. I know that's coming real soon since you said it's coming up in the upcoming weeks.
And then, so there is, what I'm trying to say is there is reparations things happening. There's groundswell on the ground, and on Joe Biden's website, he said that he would start working on reparations on day one. Do you guys believe that?
No, I didn't believe that. And Joe Biden claims now that he's working on immigration on day one. Remember, him and Kamala made a statement that it was the Latino community that helped him win. And all the time, Blacks' votes are just taken for granted. I don't even think they acknowledge the Native Americans that came out and voted for them. And so I think it's time for people of color to start looking at this differently, because every time our government, when they win, they ignore Black votes. Black votes hadn't made a difference in a long time.
Well, I know a white guy called me and was like, Philadelphia matters, when they were still counting, you know. And what happened in Philadelphia was the Black got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris over the top. I know in Detroit, the Black vote mattered. You know, the Black vote got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris over the top. And then the electorally rich state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Again, you know, Pennsylvania, they had 20 delegates. Georgia, that was Black. You know, that was Black people that got him over the top there too. So, how do we, as descendants of slavery, make sure that when we vote these people in, we're able to hold them accountable and say, what are you going to do for us? And because now, first it was, you know, I seen people dancing in Black Lives Matter Square. There was all type of things going on, but I'm like, wow, we just put in the signer of mass incarceration, and maybe he's ready to make a change, but how do we ensure? Because, like you're saying, it seems like they're shifting away from what's important to us.
All right, let me tell you what just took place. I don't know if anybody know what took place, but the Latino community was invited to a round table with Biden and Kamala Harris. We were not invited to that same round table. And they put down demands that they wanted. They demanded reparations. Interesting. They demanded reparations. Yes, they did. And they're asking for full-blown citizenship. They're asking that immigrants that come from their countries here be naturally given citizenship. Now, why do you think they're asking for the citizenship? Because those are voter rights. those are political campaign running rights. What is the largest growing population in the United States right now? The Latino population. And so, because they were invited at the table, because Biden appointed a Latino woman to run the immigration part of the country at the federal level, they are going to get what they want. Now, blacks better come together. We better stop fighting amongst each other, and we better figure out a way to come together, because Latinos said they don't want to be considered white anymore in this country. Interesting concept. When all of them file white, when they register to vote, when they do what is it called? We just had it, census. When we do our census, they all register. A large portion of them register as white people, but they don't want to be considered white. They want their Latino heritage to come out. And they know by increasing the population, it can make a difference in this country. Well, the sad part is that we're decreasing in population, but we're not just decreasing in population, we're decreasing in unity. I think this year has been the largest unity impact on our culture in the history since the civil rights movement. And so there are other ways we need to reach out, because we are indigenous. So we need to reach out to our indigenous population that was discriminated against as well. There are Latinos here that are not feeling accepted among their own community, and that we shouldn't leave them out, because they are claiming their African descent. They know that they are descendants of slaves as well. And if we come together and we sit down at a table among each other, we can definitely go before our government at a round table and say, these are our demands. But we need the Democrats to stop playing games. They need to stop saying that, like, they own the black vote. They don't own the black vote. And black people over there need to stop giving it to them and realize that there are third party, there are other people in this country fighting for something better for us. We're not always want to be at the bottom taking handouts. We want jobs. We want education. We want affordable income. We want good health care. We want the same thing that everybody else has. How in the world do they let people come across the borders to our country and other countries, even across the skies, and get something that we can't dare to get? Our children can get an education, but they can't get qualified jobs. We need a seat at that table.
Yep. And did you want to chime in?
Yeah. Even when you talk about heritage, the most famous heritage that American descendants slaves have, to me, is Sally Hemings. She had children by Thomas Jefferson. See, when we look into the child support, could you imagine how much child support Thomas Jefferson would have to pay for all of those slave children he had? And then when you go and the money's passed down to the white side, but the money wasn't passed down to the black side. And if you look at our last names, Moore, Cruz, Johnson, Smith, the last few presidents, they didn't have the original founding fathers' last names like Jackson, Smith, Johnson. We actually have the blood of those, not the poor white ones, but the ones who could afford to own slaves. Their blood is flowing through our veins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you talk about inheritance, and you're talking about passing down land, you're talking about what they run brothers down here right now, take the driver's license for child support and all that. That right there is a claim right there. The actual
no doubt.
If you look at all of the light-skinned American descendants of slaves, you know how they got that light skin? Do we have to really go into it? Because when we were here as native, we were pitch black. And when some of them came over from Africa, we were like the Africans that you see coming over here now. We were pitch black. How did you get so light? Because
Let me tell you something. As a child, you know
That can
something?
do
I used to be ashamed of that lightness. I would put baby oil on and just sit out there in the sun and roast. I was ashamed of that lightness because I felt like the color of my skin did not come naturally. It came from a history that I was ashamed of. And they made they made some of us ashamed of that history. And I say all the time, what are we? Who are we? We are descendants of a lot. And no one is talking about that blacks are descendants of white slavery because we carry the slave master's last name from rape. Blacks are descendants of Native Americans because they also married into the black family, as well as some of them were black themselves. Blacks are descendants of Latino heritage because everyone could own slaves before blacks, and blacks never could own a slave back then. We all know that as well. Nor could we marry outside of our race, but we was definitely used to bed them. And so when you look at our last names and you start figuring out where those last names come from, like farmer, untraditional last names, those are not black heritage names. They did not come out of Africa. They were not here on the native side. Those are European names. And so that means that those European people were not only slave owners, because those were not slave owner names. Those were their people that kept the slaves in check. So yeah, you can look at all of that. And then the lowest on the totem pole always talking about they want us to pay reparations. They really owe it, whether they like it or not.
Definitely.
They owe it because
Definitely.
they benefited for Jim Crow. Jim Crow had nothing to do with slavery, but they came over here and they benefited with their whiteness off of Jim Crow that harmed us in the long term.
I see you.
Also, and then
I'm sorry. I just wanted to chime in right quick because Monica said something that it took me back to childhood. And you talked about your light skin and how you would try to bathe in the sun. And it was just the opposite for dark skinned girls. They tried to make us feel as if we were, something was wrong with us. So we would be called Mammy and, and Medusa and things of that nature. It made us to be made to feel as if our dark skin was not good enough for this America, you know. And so it just brought back some memories, and I just wanted to chime in on that. And I'm gonna let y'all go back to talking about talking about your show.
But you know, Trayhan, if you really look at what they did to us, they owe us reparations for those injustice that was done, because our grandparents and our great grandparents paid into the welfare system. They paid into the social security system. They paid into helping white people get ahead by when they bought homes in redline, and all of that was denied to blacks. Blacks were denied welfare. They were denied food stamps during the Great Depression, during a real hard poverty time in their lives, but they paid for it, and people could come over here from other countries with white heritage and benefit off of that. So the audacity of them to say that we weren't born here, we had nothing to do with slavery, we didn't benefit off of that. Yeah, you did. It was called Jim Crow, and Jim Crow has not left us today. They're still benefiting off of our tax dollars.
man, no doubt. And even when the slaves would pick cotton, there was taxes on that cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And those taxes sat in the United States Treasury. And
Oh, did we lose Trey here?
Yeah, we lost you, Trey.
You want to pick up from there?
Yeah. You know, the cotton industry back in the day was equivalent to what became the steel industry, what became the auto industry, and what is now the tech industry, the biggest industry in the world. That was cotton. Cotton started the Industrial Revolution, and who picked the cotton? We did.
We
Did we get paid for it? Nope. to this day, but that started Britain to become an industrial powerhouse, and we were the catalyst of that. So it's not a question of whether we are owed reparations. It's just a question of how we're going to get to it. How we going to first we have to convince 100% of our own people that we deserve it, because some of us, it's not 100%. They like we don't. A few people say we don't. I don't need no reparations.
I hear
You
that.
hear them say that a lot. You know what I mean? But they're not. I don't think they're educated on how the system really works. And the last people to get reparations that I can remember of is the Japanese, who they put in the concentration camps in during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
They got reparations in 1988, and the one who gave
Actually,
it to them was Reagan.
I don't know if you knew that they were paying the Germans after Trump was elected in office. He said he was going to stop it. I don't know if he ever stopped it. Really, that's something I really need to look into, because to me, they pay reparations to Germans that killed Jews. I never did understand that. We've been paying them for years, just giving them free money. And so when you start looking at everybody that's collecting reparations, and for some reason we're at the bottom of the totem pole, I don't get that. I don't get why they want to keep saying no to us while they say yes to everyone else.
And that was one
I
of the
think one of the biggest.
Go ahead, Trey.
I just think one of the biggest issues is what just happened. I know it was on Biden's website, but I think there needs to be a lot more pressure on the
Treyon, we can't
Democrat
hear
Party. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you sounding better.
Okay. I think on day one, there needs to be pressure on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to pay reparations. What happened when Obama got elected? We didn't really demand anything from him. We didn't really have an agenda. We were just happy. We was just like, oh, easy. He's in the house, open change. But we didn't get no change. I think the whites got trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Blacks got nothing. We went backwards as far as wealth is concerned. And that's because we wasn't demanding anything just because Barack was, I guess, black and he was a Democrat. We didn't go up there and protest at the White House how we should have been. So I think this time, soon as he gets sworn in, we need to be at the White House demanding full and complete reparations from day one. And every time Joe Biden comes out, he needs to be asked about, does he support reparations? What's he going to do about it? Where is he at? Another problem is I seen at the last few press conferences he has had. They'll have black reporters get up and asking questions, like 3 black reporters in a row. But none of them are asking him anything that matters. None of them are asking him about reparations or economics or even police brutality, really. And it was just like, wow. So they're going to just put a black face to ask questions of the president-elect, but not have the black reporter address the president-elect about black issues. And I thought that was very disheartening. You guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I want to chime in and say it's interesting to me that when we ask for everyone to have a seat at the table, they go to a rapper, a Democrat, a movie star. They'll go to anyone else but the people like ourselves. They won't ask third-party candidates. They won't sit down at the table with black people, the working class, the struggling class blacks, and ask and have a conversation with us. The largest population of black people are always ignored. And chiming in on Obama wasn't a win to do anything. Obama was a historical win for our ancestors who said there will never be a black president before they died. That's all Obama was a win for. I don't care what nobody say. He was not a win for a black man to go into office and do something. We hoped that he would. We thought that he would, but he didn't. He did exactly what I thought he would do. He would divide the country. I knew that was coming, and I wasn't shocked when it happened. I spoke about it all the entire campaign, the whole time he was running. I knew that's what was going to come. But what I can say that this country have been ran for years by white men. White men. And at some point in time, they have to be held accountable. We can't just keep saying, well, we had a black president and he didn't do nothing for us. I don't care about that black man that didn't do nothing for us. That was a historical win for our ancestors who wanted to see a black man in the White House. What he did for white people, we knew wasn't going to benefit us. But I know that all these white men that's running for office and keep getting our votes, they better wake up. They better wake up because they thought blacks had stopped voting and Democrats couldn't figure out how to get a vote previously. They just wait. I would do everything in my power. I would use every outlet I can possibly use to stop votes for for white candidates running for in the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party has just erased us. We're not important. Biden don't think us fighting against police brutality is important. Biden don't think reparations is important. Biden don't think that our children college tuition is overpriced and that it should be wiped clean, because those are the families that are unemployed. Those are the families that's being evicted and foreclosed on, and that children can't get a job with or without an education. Oh yeah, they should be held accountable. They are the ones dying without health care.
Do you want to chime in, Roger?
Yeah, I was just when you had stepped away from for a minute. You were talking about the cotton, and I was saying how the cotton industry was like the tech industry now. It was the biggest industry in the world at the time, and we fueled us picking that cotton. We fueled that industry not only for the United States, but it was the world's biggest industry. And
That's right.
so we like the one book you were saying. This is the Slavery's Reach. It's a
Oh wow.
Minnesota book, and it tells you how the slave owners used to come up to Minnesota. They used to come up to Minnesota and bring their slaves with them and buy land and buy real estate, invest in all the companies. Travelers Insurance is a product of that. So they came.
Right.
It's a book by Christopher Lehman. He's a University of Minnesota scholar. And mine is I got an autographed copy.
Nice.
But yeah, man. The I don't know what happened from. I don't know if it was the 90s or the 2000s, but it must have been the remnants of the crack epidemic, because in the 1970s we kind of like had it together. But like in areas where we're dominant, like the school system I work for, the majority of the students are black, but all the administration, all the teachers, we have one black teacher, one, and all the principals, all administrators are white. You know what I mean? They like one guy on the board, black guy on the board. So, wherever we are, we need, on the grassroots, we need to start taking control of at least where our children go to school. At least, like even the agencies that run the social services are contracted out to the Catholic Church, contracted out to like the Lutheran Church. Those should be all contracted out to Black Baptist churches, and that's a contract between the governments and the churches. So the people who are getting served are black, but the people doing the serving is white, and that is That's some employment. Social workers make like $50,000-$60,000 a year, but all the social workers are white. The administrations. So our first reparation should be to get together and figure out how we're going to get control of all of the child support, probation, uh, CPS. We need to figure out how we're going to gain control of all these organizations, at least start some economic stimulus in our community. That's our first reparations. We have to take control of what we are a part of, and then we can go further. And like we talked about, we got 10, 12, 15 uncontested judges running. Nobody's running against them. We got a seat over there in Minneapolis where the Somalian guy was uncontested. You know what I mean? So I don't know what happened to our families are broken up. You know, it's so deep, man, that we got layers and layers and layers that we have to prepare. And we've had cities, but every time they burn down a Wall Street or Rosewood, we got to build it back. We got to build it back, because I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of cities that we didn't need nothing from the white man, but they came and they took it, they burnt it down. And one real important thing that we're going to have to start thinking about, when they do give us reparations, guess who's going to come try to take it? By force. So not only we got to prepare for when we get these reparations, we got to prepare to keep it, because it's going to be people coming after that. Once we get it, it's going to be people coming at it to take it by force. And if we stupid enough to think that they ain't, we're really missing the ball, because I mean, we have to start having security companies. It's real deep. I just leave it at that.
Trey, unmute your mic.
We can't hear you, Trey.
I don't know if he's muted or what, but I'm gonna chime in.
Dude, I'm still muted.
There you go.
Okay.
There we go. Being able to defend that wealth, they don't do that. They don't really learn that. Here, I mean,
Trey, you're breaking up really bad.
What? Why is it us? But they don't do that to others. I don't know why they don't do that to other people's communities, but that continues to happen to us. People wherever
We can't make out what you're saying, Trey.
And I have to slavery, really, because can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me better?
I can't hear neither one of you. Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm muted now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can't hear Trey though.
Trey keeps breaking up really bad.
Yeah, he's breaking up really bad.
Something's going on. I can't hear his mic through his mic. We can't hear you, Trey. You
We can't hear
muted.
you.
Y'all go ahead and finish it up.
Okay. I wanted to add, I wanted to add to that when you start talking about Wall
Okay.
Street, the Black Wall Street. You do know that they owe money to the Black Wall Street is why they were destroying them and killing them so that they did not have to pay that money back. That's why they come after us. And yes, they are going to come after us if they give us reparation. We should already know that's a given.
So we're gonna have to start having things in place to so our grandchildren can benefit off of the money. We're gonna need security companies. We're gonna need a certain percentage of our population as police, as firemen, as people in the FBI, as people. Now, see, these are some of the things that we should advocate since we, Detroit, Atlanta, Detroit and Michigan, Atlanta
You're breaking
and
up.
Georgia, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, these states that Biden won, Milwaukee and Wisconsin, that helped him get the vote. So we need these police jobs, county sheriff jobs, commissioner jobs. Well, that's a voting job, but we need to get those employment opportunities, and privately we're going to have to have security companies and things of that nature to protect what we ultimately do get from reparations. It's really deep. It's really deep. Can you hear me, Trey? Not if you can hear me.
We can't hear you, Trey. Turn your mic on.
Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. So yeah, man, I want to thank y'all. Last thing I want to say, ever since we've really been in America, I mean, we did good. All right. We did better in the 70s, but you got to think from the 1800, like 100 years of freedom. You know what I mean? And then if you look at the economic indicator, there's always been a big gap. Like we never were able to close the gap. We did have 2-parent homes and stuff for a little bit, but basically, like, because that debt's never really been paid from the get-go and the slave master, there's always been this gap, this racial wealth gap between blacks and whites, and between military. Us even being able to protect wealth goes back to not getting the wealth that we deserved in the first place. And that's why they were able to come and take it from us by military force, because we weren't the police. When we were in legislatures, they did dirty tricks and did things to get us out of there or lynched us. So like you're saying, when we do get this wealth, and for us to get this wealth, we're going to have to be on code and vote together and stick together strategically to be able to start getting that wealth and then to be able to defend it. But man, it's we're going on 9, so I just want to thank y'all for spending some time. We're gonna start doing this more weekly, and we're gonna have it so people are prepared for it to come on. And so next week we'll do this again next week. Look forward. Hopefully, if both of y'all can come on, or if you guys know somebody else that want to come on, and we'll talk about reparatory justice as it pertains to the American descendants of slavery and the Green Party National Black Caucus. And
sound good.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Thanks for
y'all.
having us. Nice
Thanks,
talking to
Trey.
everybody.
Appreciate
Good
it,
night.
man.
No problem.
All right.
I
Good night.
talk to y'all shortly. Have a blessed holiday.
You too.
Peace.
Thanks.